Welcome to 321 Profits, the podcast that brings you expert advice and behind-the-scenes information to help launch your business success. This program is a media production of GLD Enterprises Communications Limited. Now, here's your host, Gery Deer.
3, 2, 1.
Hey, welcome to 321 Profits, the podcast. This is Gery Deer, and we are here today to help educate you, bring you some more information that might help you run your business better and get to know some of the folks that we have in the region, including our guests today from Caring Transitions of Middletown. Today we have Justin Lavadour and his wife, Crystal. Welcome, folks.
Thank you.
You guys are franchisors with Caring Transitions, right?
Yes.
And we're going to get into all of those details in just a minute. I got a couple of quick things. One of the things that's going on right now to get us started into this episode, we are on episode 7, I think, of season 1 of 321 Profits. And one of the things that we try to do is help people understand how business works, try to help you do better, grow, and have a lot of education along the way. So we're going to make sure that our listeners get to understand a little bit about how you do your business. And hopefully they'll pick some things up. So as we go along, we're going to have questions and we're going to learn some things about you. And they look scared. So this should be fun. May not be the same questions you heard if you listen to the other episodes.
Good.
Just so you know. They probably will be because I'm not that creative. So so I think we're going to kind of launch into it a little bit. So as far as businesses go, I've been working with you guys for a little while now, and I have a good understanding of what you do. We've made some videos for a couple of the other franchises that everybody uses now. Apparently, they can use those, and that let me really understand how your business works. But would one of you like to just kind of explain what Caring Transitions is? What exactly do you guys do?
So, what Caring Transitions is a focused effort really on moving seniors from a big home down to a smaller home. So when mom and dad no longer need the big house and they start to move down to the condo or the townhouse and then into independent living or assisted living, really there's several problems that go on in that. One, it's how do we pack this stuff up? What do we do with it when we're done? Making sure things fit. And what do we do when it's all over?
You have categorizing before that, right? Trying to figure out what all is there, doing an assessment of everything. Is all that part of it?
That's part of it. So you want to almost reverse engineer this. So the children and the parent want to get where they're going as comfortably and smoothly as possible. And moving is a painful process because what happens is the family comes over, they're going to pack a box. But it's not just a box. There's family history. That candy dish is 30, 40 years of little smacked hands reaching into the candy dish. Mm-hmm. And there's stories with all of it.
And it was grandma's before that.
Right. That. And what I like to tell people is you're almost working at cross purposes during that visit because the kids think they're there to pack a box. But mom and dad have figured out the way to spend time with you is to work with you. So they've invited you over for a chore. And what they really want to do is relay the family history because with Alzheimer's, most of them know cognitive decline is a possibility and they want to relay that family history. Well, that really frustrates the son or daughter because they have other lives and they're here and they're focused on a task.
And it brings everything to a dead stop too, right?
It does. On general, it takes a family about 9 months to pack up a house.
Right.
Where we can do that same process for them in a matter of weeks.
So how did you happen across this kind of job? What did you guys decide? Hey, woke up this morning and said, we're going to help grandmas move out of their house. I mean, how did you come into this?
So what happened was we were coming up to help with her parents. They're older. They're in their late 60s, early 70s. And you would never know it to look at my father-in-law, who is really the heart and soul of the company. Everybody we have hired is friends of his, relatives of his, or friends of my mother, relatives of my mother. So we came up there to look to help them. And I'm retired military. So I was looking at either becoming a contractor or opening up a franchise. I wasn't really sure. And Bobby Ullman, who is with Caring Transitions at the time, reached out to me through LinkedIn. And we got to talking, and it was an intriguing idea. I'd never heard of it. But 20 years of logistics with the Air Force, I knew a lot about moving people and moving things. And I expected everybody to say this was a bad idea, don't do it. And everybody I talked to said, yeah, that sounds about like something you'd like. It's a new problem every couple of weeks, which you love, but it's routine enough that you'll be really, really good at it. So it kind of meets a combination of those things.
And Crystal, what is your tell us what your different job. I'm going to leave this with you. Who's running the show here?
Greg.
Yeah, no.
Your father-in-law.
Yeah, my dad a lot actually does a lot of it. It's been kind of fun to see. If you had told us 20 years ago when we met that someday Justin and my dad would be in business together.
You just didn't see it, huh?
No, we would not have believed it. So that's kind of been the cool part for me, is seeing kind of how we brought all the family on board with this.
Which is kind of interesting when you think of what the job is, because it really, I mean, you're in the midst of these families who are making these big changes, and your family's involved in making that happen.
And we've seen our parents go through it with our own grandparents. And it's a thing that people do like once or twice in a lifetime. It's not something that you have a lot of experience with, and you don't know what you don't know. And we've done this many, many, many times now. And so we know more what's...
It's kind of like going to Oregon when you were a settler. You needed a guide who'd been down the path and knew what to avoid and what was going to happen.
Sure.
So that when you got there, you were taken care of. But for you, it's the first time going down the trail. And for him, he's like, the weather is always like this. Oh, avoid that trap. And the problem that you get into really when you're dealing with this situation is everybody wants to be respectful of mom and dad. But how they go about doing it, oftentimes what we do is we find families that are at each other's throats, and the children are ripping themselves apart because they have different visions of how to take care of mom and dad.
Right.
And so as a neutral third party, I can come in, and oddly enough, I can say the exact same thing that you have just said to your brother or your sister or your mom and your dad. But because there isn't 40 or 50 years of history behind those words, where facial twitches don't mean anything to them because I have no background in that, they suddenly hear what you've been saying.
Right. Anybody but the kids.
Oh,
essentially.
Anybody but the family.
Right.
So I went in on one consult, and it was wall to wall with knickknacks and collectibles, floor to ceiling. And we're talking 2,000 square foot home, and they have shelves of it. And he's like, just let it all go. Just let it all go. And she's like, but these are my things. If I just had to look at it and said, really what she is saying is these are my treasures. These are the trophies of all the adventures they've been on, because that's what they did for fun. They went to estate sales. And what she's hearing is you're saying these don't matter. And I looked at her, I said, but what you don't hear is him saying, we don't have any room for all these old trophies. Therefore, there's no room for new adventures. So let's get back to the adventuring. Let's get rid of the things that are weighing us down. And they were able to move on from that because I think for the first time, both of them heard slightly different things, even though that's what they've been saying the whole hour.
And this is common then, right? I mean, this is pretty much how families do it, unless they're super pragmatic, and that happens occasionally, but it's probably pretty rare.
It is pretty rare. And, we've got clients who they have not talked to their brothers or sisters for months over these issues. Mm-hmm. And after we can kind of come in and talk to them, and, it's weird. I would never have thought I'd be a shoulder to cry on.
Kind of a family counselor at that point, aren't you? A little bit.
A little bit. And, coming back from the military background that I have, I was allowed two emotions, angry and happy.
Right.
And angry got things done.
Sure, of course.
So, so it's a different environment where I'm having to be sympathetic and understanding and letting them know this is normal. The way you're feeling is normal. Everybody goes through this. Everybody is overwhelmed. It's just, let's take some of that pressure off and let's break this problem up and attack one problem at a time. That way we're not overwhelmed. I mean, you come into your parents' house and there's years and years of history. And I have clients who will walk around their parents' home for 3 or 4 hours. And then at the end of 3 or 4 hours go, nothing got done. I was just overwhelmed. And they've done that for weeks or months. And you're able to go in and say, okay, here's what you need to do. I want you to do this one thing. Blue painter's tape is your friend.
Right.
Go in and mark what you want with blue painter's tape. Why? Because it's common. And regardless of what you're going to do, you've already identified those are the things I want to keep. And once you've physically done that, you'll be surprised at how much easier it is to walk in the room and go, no, I've already made decisions on this room.
Right.
And so you can move on to the next room, and it's a little less overwhelming.
Do you find that is the majority of people's issues when they're trying to either downsize or their family, maybe the mom and dad have passed away and they need to, liquidate the house, whatever they're going to do? Is it the attachment to the thing that is most of the problem, or is it the overwhelming of the job, or maybe both?
It's almost not even the attachment to the thing. It is almost, I am honoring my parents. How do I treat this thing that they loved in an honoring way?
So you feel like there's a little betrayal there if they don't do it a certain way.
Oh,
in their own. So
yeah.
I know what that's like.
I do too. I mean, when I sell a car, I have to apologize to the car.
Right.
Like, you're not a bad car. You still work.
This plate is just not usable anymore.
Yeah. So
if you break the plate, you got a big problem. But
right.
That's a different thing.
That's a different story. And then the other problem is you have to let family know that old doesn't mean valuable, and what they think is valuable and what is valuable is different. I've actually sold a client's trash for more than the thing he valued most,
because they didn't realize what the value of it was.
Right. To them, it's just junk, right? They're used to it. And it's like, if you haven't been in this world of collectors and things like that, you'd be surprised what goes and what doesn't go.
So tell me, Crystal, I'm going to throw this one back to you. Tell me about the process. Like, what's the first thing that families do when they are in this situation? And I'm going to preface this with, I'm kind of in the middle of this myself. I think we've talked about that a little bit. My dad passed away last year. And in the midst of that, we were trying to figure out what to do with things, but it's kind of on my brother's shoulders. So I get called in when I'm needed. So I'm just kind of staying out of it for right now. But what is the process a family goes through? Walk us through this to help the listeners kind of understand. Maybe they're sitting in this too, and they don't know what to do next. What does that look like? I
think the first thing people need to do is realize that they can't do it themselves. We like to say our biggest competition is the DIYer. The adult child who's like, I'm going to drive 5 hours to mom's this weekend and go through her stuff and then go back and get the kids to baseball practice. And honestly, especially these days with COVID and stuff, people are less likely to be out. Anyway, so the biggest thing is just deciding that you need help and that this stuff needs to go. And there's a lot of guilt involved in decluttering in general, whether it's somebody else's stuff or your own stuff. It's, all the money that was spent, all the time that went into taking care of the things. And I think the biggest thing is just realizing that you can't do it yourself sometimes. And it's better to just give that to someone who has done it and who doesn't have the emotional connection to the items. I can put a shirt in a box and not be like, oh, that's the shirt I was wearing the day that we.
Right. Exactly.
So I think that'd be the first thing, is just realizing that it has to be done, and maybe doing it yourself is not the best option.
How much time does it take before, and this is for either one of you, how much time does it take before somebody realizes they're in over their heads and does need to call for help?
It really does depend, and this is going to sound strange, but it really does depend on how they grew up. People who, like me, grew up very poor, we've been taught our most valuable possession is our money.
Mm-hmm.
So outsourcing something and paying money to someone is like
painful.
the worst thing you could do.
Right.
Those people take a long time, and so they might spend weeks or months. And it really takes somebody like the realtor or somebody who's had a positive experience to go, no, let somebody else handle this. It's going to be okay. Because the onus in that situation is to protect money, which is the asset, not realizing that time is always your most valuable asset. Mom and dad don't care who packs the box.
Right.
What they care about is the time that they have with you being well spent. And it's kind of that transition. Now, kids who grew up used to outsourcing the lawn care and the house cleaning and little menial tasks, they have an easier time with it. But I had one client, he was one of my first, and he said, why should I hire you versus doing this myself? And I said, well, how much do you make an hour? And he goes, I make $400 an hour. I said, do you really want to spend your $400 an hour doing a $10 an hour job? So it's one of those.
It's all about the individual then, like what
Right.
their value of something is,
Right.
whether it's the dollar or the item.
Right. And for some people, it's like when you bring in a third party, we don't have to fight about it anymore. We're going to they can all dump on me.
Right.
As one movie said, you're paid to take the blame.
Right.
And that's okay. We can take that. We know we're going to get you to the other side, and we got to convince them the other side is the goal. Don't get bogged down in the weeds. Remember, keep your eye on the prize, and the prize is getting the house cleaned out, getting mom to her new place. Everything after that is minutia you want to let somebody else deal with.
So we've been talking a little bit about how families get into this and the problems they have now. And it isn't just, and I should probably put this out there, this isn't just when a parent or grandparent or something dies. You could be relocating them to assisted living. Maybe you're moving them in with you because they can't take care of themselves. There are any number of reasons. Maybe
Right.
you're selling your own house. You can help with any of that, right? This is
Yes.
all part of that process. So you decided to go with the franchise model of this, right?
We did.
So you went to a franchise. What does that experience feel? I know that we've got some listeners out there going, I'm considering not having our own business. Maybe we'll buy into a franchise. Tell us about what that experience has been like without ticking off the franchise.
The franchise comes with blessings and curses.
Right.
And so I should probably start with the blessings. Probably one of the best is I have great mentors in the other franchise areas. So in the Cincinnati area, I have William Prather, I have Rosie Harris, I have Gina Siegel. All of them, I've worked for all of them. They have all taken me under their wing. And it's just been great.
And you're the newest of that group, right?
I'm the newest of the group. And I feel like every day they just bless me with some new opportunity or some way of looking at it. And when I get to feeling too down in the weeds, because very, very few people have ever been a business owner.
Right.
And coming from the military, it's still not the same. And when I get too down on myself and I'm just frustrated and I'm wallowing in self-pity, one of them will kick me in the pants and say, okay, you've complained enough. Now get up and get going and get back to work.
Quit whining and just
Quit
get back to
whining
it.
and just do it. You can figure it out. So yeah, that's probably one of the biggest blessings of owning a franchise.
And we have locations all over the country, and we also have a Facebook group
So
just
you're
for
able to
the
communicate
owners.
with
So
each other, get some advice from each other, that can have some support.
right. And then also discuss, like problem bidders on our online site or something, but there's no situation that somebody hasn't run into.
So the majority of the people that we talk to on 321 are independent business people. They don't have a franchise. They don't have a big company behind them typically. And we're picking their brains so the folks out there can get some information and kind of learn some things. So what's the biggest thing you have learned, either of you have learned from doing this way, rather than watching? I know you guys do some networking. You see some other businesses like ours is independent and we have to do everything on our own. What is the biggest advantage you think that you have over an independent person that did not go into a franchise? And this could be any franchise, I guess.
The biggest is for me is the fact that I can reach out to my fellow franchise owners and know they're not my competition.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if I was in another industry, say printing graphic t-shirts, I can't really go to another t-shirt printer and really ask for advice because I'm his competition.
Right.
So as a result, I think that's probably the biggest thing is I can go and say, okay, here's what I'm doing, and have them go, oh no, you don't want to go down that road. You're already, nope, shut that down. Here's why. It's very, as we say, open kimono.
Okay. Let's keep the kimono closed for now. It's a family show, but go ahead. I've killed Crystal's thoughts right now.
I would think too, we didn't come from a business background. Like you said, he was retired military. And so we didn't know a lot about the, payroll and kind of the businessy side of things. And they helped us get started with that, which we could have figured out. But I think having the backing of the franchise to kind of,
there's some procedures already in place.
Right.
And you just have to learn what they are, get the software, all that sort of stuff.
right.
So let's think about the number of companies out there that are franchised. So you have probably the one that comes to mind for most people is fast food. So you think about a McDonald's, McDonald's has corporate-owned restaurants and they have franchise-owned restaurants.
Mhm.
And what you see is the people who have something like that. There are other ones, like there's a muffler shop. What is it called? Muffler Brothers. That's a franchise. There are a lot of franchise companies out there. So what makes Caring Transition, as you said, they're all over the country. It's a big company, but for somebody who's trying to operate a business or something, what piece of advice would you have for somebody who's thinking about about doing a franchise rather than starting something from scratch? They want to get into business. What would you say to them?
You want to walk into a franchise with your eyes wide open as to what it is and what it is not.
Do you need to know the business first?
You want to know.
It's going to depend on the.
It's going to depend on
business
your
model.
natural inclinations, but really, you want to hire a lawyer and look over your franchise agreement and really understand that.
Mhm.
I think that was probably the source of the biggest frustration between corporate and myself was we didn't really go over that agreement and I didn't understand it. I thought I did.
Right.
And probably my biggest mistake was a lot of thinking I had a PMP, I had 2 master's degrees. I'd risen pretty high in the military. Yeah. That doesn't mean
it doesn't
you can
matter.
speak
No,
legalese
it doesn't
at
matter.
all.
Even the lawyers don't know what's on the paper.
Yeah. And that was probably the biggest thing. I think if I had walked in more aware of what I was getting into,
Yeah.
that a lot of the frustration would have been gone.
Do you
right up
think
front.
that that's something that people don't realize when they get into something like this? I mean, the thing I run into a lot because, in the marketing and PR side of things, we get businesses that are just getting started a lot. We have a lot of startups. And the startups run into something. It's like Joe the plumber yesterday decided he was going to be a plumber. He got laid off from his big factory job as a steam fitter or something. And he decides, well, I can plumb. That's a lot easier. And I can just set my shingle up and, buy a truck, put my tools in, and I'm ready to go. And then the reality sets in as he's sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. So would that be an advantage too? The marketing is a little bit easier because you already have sort of some resources sending work to you. Is that piece of it?
That is some.
There's a brand there of sorts. You don't have to start from scratch.
Sure. So like my very first client was actually a referral from Gina.
Okay.
And Gina called me to say, I have this situation.
And Gina, we got to clarify, Gina's one of the other franchisors nearby us.
Nearby
Cincinnati.
Yeah. So she reached out to me and she had a situation and she said, I can't take it. Could you come in and help? And so I did. So throwing business back and forth between us, making sure your clients are taken care of, that's probably one of the biggest things.
And from the marketing side, they do the website for us. They put together a very nice professional website. That's not something that we had to design from scratch.
Right. And it looks like all the other websites.
Yeah.
So you've got this
You've got the
consistency and brand.
branding.
Right. So when you're doing something like that by yourself, as Julie and I both know very well, you have to start from zero if you're starting from zero. So is that something that was that's obviously attractive to you because it's that batch of work, whether it's marketing, I think, Crystal, you mentioned the accounting system's all set up. You just have to learn how to do it. And they have support for those kind of things. So a franchise in that model is pretty good. The type of work itself, why choose that? You could have franchised anything. Why did you choose that?
Mostly for a couple of reasons. One, I love chaos. And there is nothing more chaotic than a household move.
Our producer, Julie Barth, is cringing over here, which is weird because you live in chaos most of the time. Okay.
There was a song I adopted when I was very young in the military, and the line in the song that grabbed my attention was, "Where there's confusion and chaos, if I know what I want, I'll take it easily." And I was like, huh. So I walked into my office. There's confusion and chaos. I knew what I wanted, and I got it easily. And I realized chaos was my friend. Far more than my enemy. It's the best way to straighten things out is to walk into a chaotic situation when you know what the end result that you want is.
You pull the things out that you need and make those work to your advantage.
Right. And then I had done 20 plus years of moving people around. So when I went to Michigan State and they asked me, what do you do? I said, I move anybody and anything, any place, anytime, anywhere, by any means.
Because this is what you did in the military.
That's what I did in the military.
Make sure that's clear. Yeah.
So Operation Desert Shield, Desert Storm, those were a little before my time. Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom, which was in Afghanistan. Those were a couple of my moves. I got pretty good at it. And I got really, really good at relying on really, really good team members. You can't say enough about what your team behind you is going to do. I mean, you can put a wooden spoon and push it through something if you get enough weight behind it. And so you don't want to go too far in any of this without saying, without a really good team behind you, it's really, really hard. And as an independent, I knew I'd have to grow that team organically.
Right.
With almost no experience. So a franchise was very attractive because there was all this weight that wanted you to succeed, because no franchise,
they don't want you to buy into it and then fail.
No,
that's just crazy. That's a waste of their time and your money, and it's just not going to work for them
unless they are the evilest person. And I did encounter.
There's a few of those out there.
There's one guy, and his model. It wasn't Caring Transitions. Let me state that. It was out in Hawaii, and his model was, I'll sell it to somebody, and when they fail in 6 months, I'll resell it to somebody. And
I'm sure that's the right way to think about that.
It's very short term.
It very much is.
But that's the way he did it.
So, Crystal, is all that accurate? He loves the chaos. And did you get dragged in, or were you a willing participant?
We were kind of naive and what exactly went into running a business, and we homeschool our son. So I'm like, yeah, honey, you go do that, and I'll stay here and do my thing. And
okay, I'm gonna pause you there. He's looking like, no, that was crazy. What was the thing that surprised you the most about running your own business? What really jumped out at you? I get this. I ask this question of a lot of not just guests on 321, but just business owners that I work with. What is the thing that surprised you most about getting into your business?
How all-consuming it is, I think, is
because it's still, franchise or not, you're it.
Right.
You're doing the work.
I think that's the biggest thing. And then how many hats you have to juggle, especially at first. We're just now kind of getting to the point where we can give some of these things over to other people, but
you had to figure those out first,
those out
and
first.
Who was right for the jobs,
right?
Of course.
And the weird thing is as Rosie told me once, who is also another owner down there, Justin, you'll work 120 hours in a high-paying job or in this job. The difference is you get to pick which 120 hours you work. So, like today, it was 1:00. My dad was handling one job site. My Aunt Jackie was handling another, and I was out there building a filter with my son because I had 20 minutes in the middle of the day to do it. Mm-hmm. You don't get those when I'm working 9 to 5 at a corporate job.
Right. You're done at 5:00, right. And you can plan a little better. And this is the problem of pretty much anybody who's in business for themselves.
Yes. And
it's interesting because one of the things that I like to promote on anytime I'm talking to a business owner, when we're doing an article about this, I wrote about this one time about there's no such thing as self-employed. That's kind of BS, because you're always working for somebody. Even if you've got, when I left corporate America in 1998 and started my own thing, I traded one boss for 30.
Yes.
And then there was 100. And then I dialed it back because that was too much. So now I have 15, and that's okay. And now you're in a situation where you have the same kind of ability, but at least you have, on a franchise side, you have some of the stuff to do the job with.
Right.
It's set up for you in advance. So at least you don't have that. But that doesn't make the work easier, does it?
No. And sometimes you're like, why did you do that? And, there's frustrations because do this, but not that. We don't do this. And as I'm fond of telling people, I've got 5 bosses, Bob. 5 bosses. Because
8 bosses.
Not only do I have the client I'm working for, I have all the bidders that are going to buy their stuff to help deliver a cleaned out house. I have the children with all of their expectations. I also have my other franchise owners, and I don't want to disappoint them or leave a black mark on their name, right, their reputation. Then you have corporate, and then you have the family. So you're constantly juggling all these expectations.
So when you make a mistake, you got 5 people coming around to tell you that you did it. And then it's a different process to make each one of those people happy too.
Yes.
Because the result is different for each one of them.
Right.
The correction is different for each
Yes, I found out my superpower is saying it's my fault. I'm sorry. How do I make it right?
Does that work everywhere, Crystal?
It works a lot.
She's careful about her answer now.
The only time I've really encountered a client where saying I'm sorry, how do I make it right didn't work was when they were so stressed out due to finances or some other thing. I couldn't say anything that would make them happy.
Right.
And
that isn't because of you. It's their situation.
It's their
in.
situation.
Yeah.
And you have to realize that every time I see a person, there's 1,000 things I don't see that's going on behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it takes a long time to figure out really what is the main concern. What's the main thing they're worried about?
And that could be any number of things.
Sure.
And stuff you're never going to know about too.
Right.
They'll tell you something, but it's probably related to your job.
Yeah. But after a while, after 50, when you've been in somebody's house for 15 days, they either love you or hate you.
Right.
And I'm fond of saying at my H7 networking meetings, I've been adopted by 9 out of 10 clients. I'm just not in the will.
We're here with Justin and Crystal from Caring Transitions in Middletown. And this is the part where we talk a little bit about you guys. So we know that everybody has a theme. So we have some sort of fun questions to go through with you. And they very well may be the same ones that you heard before, but we'll see what happens here. So the number one thing we start out, and since we have two guests, we have to do them separately. So no looking at each other. We have to put a big thing between you. Unfortunately, they can see, so I can't pretend there's like a different booth in a room this time.
I won't.
You don't look over there. So Crystal, we're going to start with you. What's on your night table?
I have a lamp. I have a space for my glasses. And my CPAP machine.
Okay.
But I would like to say that she actually went retro and the lamp is integrated into the table, so it takes up less space.
Oh, it's all like all the one thing.
Yeah, so we found it from like a 1960s when
that was
one of our
estate
estate sales.
Yeah, that was really popular.
And I was like, oh, that's brilliant because it saves so much space.
Okay, so anything else? That's it?
That's it.
Everyone says dust.
Oh, well, yeah, there's plenty of that.
Okay, just
cat hair.
Justin, what about your side? What do you got?
I got an alarm clock.
Like an actual alarm clock?
Like an actual alarm clock, but I don't really need it because I have 2 cats, a dog, and a 10-year-old boy who wake me up at the same time regardless.
Which one gets there first?
Generally the cat.
Aha!
The cat gets there because he wants his food and he wants it now. And he doesn't care what my excuse is.
No, it does not care. Does not care. Okay.
The dogs get to sleep in, not me.
So you, one of the things that on the break, Crystal, you said something about you listened to our episode that was done at the mausoleum. So that was at Woodland Cemetery here in Dayton, Ohio. And that was one of Julie's favorites that we've done so far because it was just so weird. But so if you were going to pick, who would you like to be buried next to? A famous person that you would like to be buried next to. And it doesn't count with him.
Say other than him?
Yeah.
I'm not famous.
He's not famous. We're going to make him famous off of this, I'm sure.
Wow. Okay.
Who would you pick? Alive or dead already? It doesn't matter. Just somebody. Who would you? That would be like the coolest thing in the world. I mean, you're not going to know you're dead, but it's kind of funny.
My first thought would be Daniel Boone because he's back in my family tree. I think my 6th great grandfather. Or 2 of his kids. So.
Yeah. Okay. So we got somebody on this show related to Daniel Boone. All we need is somebody related to Simon Kenton, and we've got it because he was the Ohio Daniel Boone. Justin, how about you?
It'd be hard. I think probably Augustus Caesar. I'd like to ask that guy some questions. I mean, at 19, you take over probably the most powerful world empire.
Yeah, that's
and
big
you
deal.
run it successfully,
pretty well for a while.
Yeah, that
but
just
then it all went to hell.
Well, nothing lasts forever.
I don't think he did that though, right? There was other stuff that was involved in it.
Well, I love history, so one of the first things actually that we did was we went to Rome, and I got to fulfill my lifelong dream of having me, my brother, and my uncle at the Colosseum.
Nice.
And if you ever go traveling, hire the tour guide. It's
Yes,
so worth the
hire
money.
the tour guide.
We got into the Coliseum when everybody else was stretched miles and miles around it. But I was cheap, and I'm like, oh, we don't need a tour guide. I've read history. My wife was like, no, the 20 euros is well worth it. Oh my gosh, was she so right? It's been 15 years almost, and we still talk about that trip.
That would be an interesting thing. Okay, so that's a big deal. I'm not going to ask you, because you don't have a mic anyway, but do me? Bob Crane. Yeah. Da Vinci? He's a hack. Give me a break. Drew a bunch of pretty pictures, never got anything to work. So Henry Ford didn't invent anything. He figured out a way to make stuff faster. It's a big deal. It's kind of cool. I mean, besides, I'm not allowed to like him. I have to be a GM guy. I'm talking from Dayton, Ohio, and this is, a member supported thing. So
I don't know. Leonardo made a lot of cool military machines.
He did. He came up, but he never actually built them.
Well, no, because he realized what they would do. So the tyrants built it for him.
Well, that's what you do. You get the military to do it for you. Then you don't have to pay for the money. It's a lot of R&D. See, that's expensive. And somebody got the helicopter to work for sure.
Yes.
Edison just stole things.
Tesla would have been interesting.
Einstein thought everyone was nuts but him, which is, he actually had it backwards. Everybody's crazy. We all belong in an asylum. It's the smart people that should be on the outside, and I'm not sure who that is at this point. He never worried about pants. His wife used to have to make sure he had pants when he went out. That's somewhat of a myth. There's a little bit of difference there. Yeah. Okay, so here we're gonna go on to another one. So is that really? That's as much? It feels like it's longer than I'm looking at the time clock here. So the next thing is I'm gonna start with Crystal again. What's on your pizza? No consideration to anyone else. What's on your pizza?
I like ground beef and black olive.
So close. So close. How about you, Justin?
I'm a ham and pineapple guy.
Oh!
I love ham and pineapple.
No, that's wrong.
I have ate that same pizza for probably 30 years. It's what I love.
Are you team pineapple too occasionally, or you don't care?
I actually like the pineapple pizza cold. So I don't like it hot. That
makes a little more sense.
Yeah.
Because pineapple shouldn't be hot.
And then the next day, I like the leftover ham and pineapple.
Okay, so if he's got the pineapple, you'll have it the next day right out of the fridge. Okay, so what are we up to now? 71%? They do cancel each other out, so we got both. We're keeping a run because Team Pineapple was winning, or Team No Pineapple was winning there for a little while, so I think we've ticked up one. But they don't count if they've... No pineapple bad.
Well, out of 5 people, me and my mother-in-law are the only ones that like ham and pineapple. My son doesn't like it. My dad doesn't like it. She doesn't like it. So
okay.
It's 3 out of 5. They like non-pineapple.
That's not too bad. She was talking about, Crystal, your choice, because mine is ground beef and green olives.
Oh.
It's the only real difference. So I was in college because you had a $4 meal deal in school. And the $4 meal deal was for $3.99, you got a 2-topping pizza and like a large drink delivered. Mm-hmm. And I would be, digging in the car to find the extra 99 cents because I would have like $3 and that would be it. But the only things I would get so there was something green on it. It's the only green thing I could stand to be on the thing. And they didn't have a big bunch of choices anyway, so I kind of got stuck with it.
She only started really eating olives because our son likes olives, and she was getting him to eat the olives, and that's how it ended up on the pizza. Before that, it was ground beef and sausage.
Yeah. I don't usually do 2 meats unless everybody else is having something. Pepperoni, bacon? Julia's saying pepperoni, bacon, mushroom. No, stop. That's just wrong. You're killing me. So I want to talk about something. The last quarter of the hour, we're going to talk a little bit about your advice to people interested in getting into business, and also to families. I'm going to have one of you speak to the families and one of you speak to the business owners. So that's going to be kind of interesting. But for right now, you said something earlier on one of our breaks. You said, because I mentioned hoarding, which is a big problem for seniors, especially if they're rolling into dementia, things like that, or they've got some other mental issues going on, or they just like to keep stuff. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mental illness. You could just be a little bit, crazy about holding on to things. My dad, for example, my mom and dad had this agreement, unspoken, where the house is sitting in the middle, and there's a big old long driveway. And mom's stuff is where the house is. and his stuff cannot intrude on that. There's the inside stuff, but the outside stuff, like she had her flowers and her yard decorations and all that. On the other side were trucks and tractors, and he didn't collect anything small.
Right.
So this is kind of where I'm getting with it. You said, I'm going to quote you here, everyone is a hoarder.
Yes.
Let's hear what I want to hear this.
Okay, so
I think you're right.
So start off with everybody is a hoarder. They all collect certain things that have no intrinsic need in their life.
You don't have to have this thing. It's not food, water, shelter. It's nothing related to that.
But so it came about as a daughter who was telling me, she goes, my mom's a hoarder. And you could see the mom's head kind of die down. And I said, have you ever seen a homeless person with a shopping cart? They're a hoarder. Some of them have 2 or 3 shopping carts. They don't need that much, but they're hoarding it, right? I've met environmental hoarders.
You said that too. What is an environmental hoarder?
An environmental
keeps a lot of oxygen around?
No, they keep a lot of stuff they intend to recycle.
But it just never goes there.
But it never goes out.
So you mentioned like a garage full of paper.
Yep. We've had garage
bins full of plastic bottles.
Uh-huh.
Or cars
aluminum
full of plastic.
cans.
I'm looking at our producer right now because she knows what I'm talking about.
Okay. Well, then you get the 1930s. They went through the Depression. I found sandwich bags full of zip ties, like from the bread, the little wire things. And I was like, oh, man, I can't believe you kept that. 10 minutes later, I was grabbing out of that bag to tie something up.
Right. And there you go.
And that's the problem is, and I am a pack rat. I'm a piling pack rat, which is even worse. So it's all organized depending on the pile. Right.
That's how I do laundry.
And
no, your piles are scary. I don't. No, it's okay.
And so the problem is you're rewarded for being a pack rat because at some point you've used it. And the worst thing is, the minute you give it away, you're going to need it the next day. It's like,
so there's a little OCD in there. A little obsessive compulsiveness. There's a little bit of family experience, which is probably where my mom's thing came from because she had toys. She had nothing growing up. She had one doll.
And that'll make it worse.
So she started collecting dolls, when she got a little bit older, and they had the money, which we didn't have when I was growing up. But once we're all out of their hair, they have a little money now. So mom bought dolls and toys, and she had these elaborate Christmas decoration villages that took up rooms full, and we still have all of that stuff.
Oh yes.
So, but she was very careful about having a place for it to be. It was not stacked everywhere. It had its own closet, its own space, and it was put in there. Well, it was put in there as best as I could put it in there because I was always the one having to do that. But so if everybody has this thing, what is the weirdest thing that you've seen or type of thing that you've seen people keep in abundance?
In abundance.
Like a pile of sliced cheese wrappers or I can't think of
that would be a weird one. I would not come across that. No.
Some of it grows accidentally. They just manage to keep it around.
Okay.
And it just kind of moves with them. Books is probably the biggest thing I see most people hoard. They say the average American has 8 books that they intend to read but haven't read. So they're just sitting there. They're waiting to read them. Probably the coolest thing we ever came across was a 6-foot harp. It had a carved head on the...
Like a professional harp.
Yeah.
I don't want a harp.
And
I don't do strings. I'd use it for a bow and arrow.
If you want to see it, it's at the Westchester Antique Mall. It's got when this harp came out, there was a welcoming committee for him. He's just neat.
Wow.
He's carved. He's beautiful as a piece of art. I don't know if he's any good as a harp. But
I'm not sure any harp is any good as a harp. I'm gonna get letters now, which is okay.
Don't offend the harp community. They're serious.
I don't care. I play a piano. It's a harp with hammers.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Bring it.
I don't know that there's anything I've seen that's weird. Just like nobody else does it.
Interesting though. We had one lady who was a very organized hoarder. You get those, and this lady very much loved to entertain.
And they don't think they're hoarding if they're organized, do they?
Right.
They don't see it.
No.
And she loved to entertain and to have parties and spend time with family and do crafts. This example.
Crafters or hoarders.
She had 11 bins, very neatly organized by color, of curling ribbon. Just the skinny curling ribbon.
Curling. Oh, the kind you put on a gift.
Like you put on a balloon.
You pull.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
pull
And
back
so-
with the scissors and make it all. Yeah.
So if you can extrapolate that out to the
Oh my
entire
gosh.
house,
Yeah. And that's the weirdest thing is you really do get a sense of who they are as you're going through the stuff of what they've collected and what's important. And, it's not, the weird thing is it's not always what they showed on the surface.
That's right.
I know there were times where I'd walk and talk to family. I said, well, what about this with your dad? Or what about this with your mom? Or, wow, I can't believe how amazed he was with whatever they did. And they said, I didn't know he cared about that.
Right.
I'm like, well, I found 5 boxes of your 5th grade year, and we find all sorts of stuff that the family has
I
forgotten.
found my baby teeth in my mother's dresser, like a whole bottle of my baby teeth, which I thought was just weird. You have teeth in your dresser?
And you don't want to
just
throw them away.
Why
No.
don't you throw it away? It's not useful anymore. Are you making a
See?
necklace out of it?
No, but see, you're looking at that through
That's weird.
you're looking at that through your lens of it's not useful to me. You're
Well,
not
what
looking
was
at
mom going to do with them? I mean, honestly, what were you going to do with those, Mom? If she answers me, we're getting out of here. 'cause that's
probably
just-
look at them and remember you when you were a cute little baby and she liked you.
Okay, I'll buy that. I'm not sure she ever liked me, but she put up with me. So we want to get a little bit of a feeling for maybe some advice you have for businesses or business owners who are doing this kind of thing, meaning that they're either thinking about a franchise or thinking about going into business for themselves, or just tell us a little something about what you've learned along the way. Let's start with Crystal. Just for what have you learned about business or about running your own business? I should have asked before, how long have you been doing this? I don't know if I asked you that at the beginning. We may have.
we opened the business in October of 2019.
So 3 years in,
Mhm.
and you had COVID in there,
Mm-hmm.
but you guys were still working pretty well during COVID, right? That
Yes.
didn't. It still have to do all that stuff,
Right.
so it's still there. So, Crystal, what do you think you have learned, and what advice would you have for the people out there who are thinking about a business, or maybe they're already in one?
You need to find something that you do enjoy doing.
That is a question I didn't ask you guys. I usually ask is, do you like this? We'll come back to your question in a second. Do you like doing this?
Like anything, you like parts of it, but like Justin said earlier, we're kind of history buffs, he and I are. And so
So you probably see stuff that's interesting, and you
Right.
can kind of get all.
researching the items, finding it's a way to connect with the past in a very tangible way.
You're urban archaeologists.
Ooh, I like that.
We'll steal that one.
Send him a bill for that.
Yeah.
Put that down. So we were going back to what have you learned, and what would you, in your 3 years of this, what would you impart as advice to people if they were thinking about getting into a business of their own, franchise or not?
Be prepared for the unexpected because you think you know what you're doing, and there will always be a curveball. There will always be something new, something just out of left field that you're like,
So what do we do now?
yeah.
But so is an advantage to that of having the team of people that you have around you, you can solve those problems?
Oh,
Or
absolutely.
somebody's got an answer or a
Somebody's-
suggestion.
Yeah, somebody's seen something similar. Yeah, I think that's the big thing is knowing who to go to for advice and not being afraid to say, we've never seen this and I don't know what to do, and find someone who can point you in the right direction, who knows more than you do.
Right. Justin, what about you? What have you learned, and what piece of advice would you give to people?
The biggest piece of advice would be you go into that and know your family is going in with you. So oddly enough, the first year was not a good year. We didn't make any money. I just turned down, an $80,000-$90,000 a year job.
And that's really not uncommon in a new business.
No.
The first year is always pretty rough. They usually tell you in the first 5 years or something that the small businesses fail. I think it's gotten down to 3 now.
Yeah. And it wasn't doing well. And I looked at Crystal and I said, okay, we're not doing well. Here's where we're at. I'm so sorry. And she goes, that was part of the plan. And just having a supportive spouse, a supportive family, because if you have a lot of people around you who are like, oh, you're screwing up, it's hard enough to go into the job knowing you screwed up. It's even worse knowing 15 other people agree with you.
And they all live in your house.
And they all live at your house, and you're going to see them at dinner that night. But it's easier when they're really supportive. So don't go into a business if your spouse is like, no, I don't want to be a part of that. It will go
because
bad.
if you're in your own business, and I can say this from years of experience, when you're in your own business, no matter what the format of it is, it becomes you. And if people are not supportive, if they're against that for whatever reason, it's going to collapse because you can't physically, emotionally, mentally maintain,
Right.
Especially like you said, when things go bad, because you're trying to stay the course and just go, okay, that's sometimes crap happens and we're just going to keep on moving. Right. But when you have everyone saying, see, I told you so, I knew you were going to fail. It's that kid on the baseball movie, you're gonna lose, and then he finally gets hit with a ball. I love that. That's what you should do to somebody.
And it's one of those things where it's like, you need people to watch out for you, to see things you don't see. Like, you've been doing this way, and there's a better way. Let me show you a trick.
Right.
Or, did you think about that? So like my dad, he double checks all my work, which is amazing because I can't spell. But he's also the one to go, did you talk to so-and-so about this? Did you talk to so-and-so about that? And he says he doesn't like to talk to clients, but he absolutely loves it. And he loves to go in because he gets to brag about his favorite thing, which is his family, his brother, his aunt, his uncles, his cousins, because they do great work. And he gets to brag about them and comfort a family along the same way. So my dad is a ex-firefighter chief. So he comes from that community service mindset.
The team mentality
Oh,
is
very much
certainly
so.
there. So you have a job here that's also very social
Yes.
in a lot of ways, because you have to make that connection with those folks if they're going to like you, if they're going to be, like you said, stuck in their house for 6 weeks. You need to be able to have a good connection with them.
Right.
And there's a lot of trust that the clients have to put into us because we are going through their things, through their personal documents. We've come across, like I said, like personal information. We've found things that they didn't even know that they thought were long lost, and we could have just slipped in your pocket and walked out the door. So like I said, there's a lot of trust that the clients need in us, that we are there to help them, and we're not out to rip them off.
Yeah, we're not going to do something that's not in the client's best interest. Because long term, most businesses are transactional, right? You go to McDonald's, you get a good hamburger, you'll come back. You get a bad one, that's okay. You'll drive down the road 3 minutes and get another good.
Or you expect
hamburger.
There's going to be a bad
Right.
one once in a while, something
Right.
like that.
Whereas with us, word of mouth is really the way we grow.
And it will destroy you if it's wrong.
Right. And one time that one client thinks I work not in their best interest, I'm going to hurt a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So there.
And again, like you said, because you're in a franchise, that's going to carry to the local ones near you,
Right.
and the name itself.
Right.
So
And-
somebody's going to be upset up the ladder somewhere.
Right. And so the previous owner of my area, one of them had a lot of bad reviews about him taking client stuff, him selling their stuff, he just did a lot of weird things.
This was years before we opened ours.
Years
Okay.
before we opened ours. And he hasn't been with the company in a long, long time. But those reviews are still hanging out there because the internet is forever.
Right.
But I've had others where, I had one family and they told me all about their valuables. They knew where we were great. Well, as I'm digging underneath Dad's bed, because you have to, I come across, a stack of silver coins that have silver value, but they also have collector
Value too.
So I started snapping pictures, send it to the family, because I asked them, what do you want done with this? Because you didn't know about it. And they're like, okay, you can do that. But, they were like, how much did that coin cost? And I said, that one will go for about $500. And it was, about the size of a 50-cent piece. And if you don't trust the people who are in your house doing those things, then it's going to break down. Now, I've also fired customers who would not trust my people.
Mm-hmm.
It's one thing to not trust me, because trust has to be earned. But when the third or fourth day of the guy, after we've been returning money, we've been finding the jewelry and returning it, and the guy still says, how do I know I can trust you? That's when I looked at it and said, you know what? My people don't need to be treated like this. You can have your money back. Here's your problem. You can take your trust issues and go.
And we should probably point out too that in any kind of business, I've done segments on when it's time to fire a client, because that happens, and I have let go of a few over the last several years, and for various reasons. Could be just it's too long. They needed something more than I can give them at that point, or I just it wasn't a good fit anymore. But when you have to do something like I should back this up. Is your industry like we hear? For example, let me pull one out of the air. The roofing industry gets a lot of crap because of so wide of quality between different companies. Because you got the storm chasers, they come into town, they fix your roof, and they disappear, and you never know. That's a common problem. Is there an issue with your industry as well? Is there anything like that people should look out for?
Oh, sure. There's a lot of them. So within estate sales, there's three main models. You have the very high end estate sale companies where they only take the very best thing. So they guarantee you, I'll sell this for X dollars or more. But they're going to leave you with a half used bottle of laundry soap. Your house isn't going to get cleaned out with that company. That's not what their model is. Then you have the other model where it's mom and pop. We got three guys and we're going to clean out your house. We don't know how much money it's going to cost when it's all said and done. They're working on commission only, and they're going to get you a cleaned out house. It's just a question of did they get it as much, and not each service is bad, right? Because when you're dealing in estate sales, you're trading time for money. So the faster it's got to go, the less it can be worth, right? If it's all got to get out by tonight, the cheapest, best thing you can do is throw it all away. That's the best thing you can do. If you have 24 hours, find a guy that will do a buyout of some of it and take as much as you can.
And they're going to deal with it themselves and try to get their money back.
But they're going to offer you pennies on the hundreds of dollars.
Is it because that's just the situation, or are they trying to take advantage of you?
It's just that's the situation.
It's just how it's set up.
Because when they're into it, you've got to realize they've got to get the trucks, they've got to store it. They don't know when they're going to be able to sell this.
And they don't know what's really worth.
And they don't know what it's worth. They've just come in and agreed to help you out. And they're going to throw 10, 15, 20 guys at this problem to get it done in 24 hours.
And they probably do a cursory look at stuff and just kind of guess.
They do.
From their experience. So,
right.
But none of these is necessarily bad, right?
No.
It's just the situations that you're in.
And understanding exactly what the company you're working with is offering. We've had people be like, we thought we were hiring them to clean out the house, and they took all the valuable stuff and left us
with everything else.
And so, or vice versa, they're like, well, we thought they were going to sell the nice things, and instead they just hauled everything out. So understanding exactly what you're hiring, and we will do both. I mean, we have sold everything from cars and fur coats, like you said, laundry soap, and the little tissue holder on the back of the toilet. And basically what we give you is an empty house.
Right. So how many of these, are there a lot of businesses out there like this?
There's not a lot of businesses. There are similar businesses. And the competition is pretty tough because when you're dealing with estate sales and that sort of thing, you're not really dealing with a lot of money. You're dealing with a lot of volume.
Mm-hmm. To say nothing about the human factor.
Right. But again, I love the do-it-yourselfers, as Crystal said, because they're like, well, I'll just have a garage sale. Okay, on average, you make 17 cents an hour, because you didn't factor the time to get it all, sort it all, weigh it out, haggle with people, and then nobody counts their throwaway cost. What did it cost you to throw it all away when you were done? And, oh, by the way, if you were selling things for top dollar, YouTube would not be full of people going, I went to a garage sale and I can't believe they sold this, because you don't have time to become an expert in everything.
But somebody's perusing your garage sale who is, and you're going to sell that one thing.
Sure.
And that's your $17 an hour, 17 cents an hour, because the rest of this stuff is really not worth it. You put your kids' jeans out there, I just hate the tables full of clothes because nobody ever buys them.
Oh no. Don't make that mistake. The T-shirts and jeans from the 80s and 90s are super hot right now.
But that's what I mean. You're putting them in front of people who are looking for them.
Right.
Which makes it different than just having them at the neighborhood garage
sale.
So that's a huge piece. So as we're coming down to the end of our hour here, I hope that people listening, kind of understand that all of these pieces go into just about any kind of business. I mean, the concepts that we have. Where can people find you guys? Give us a.
So the best way to find us is go to caringtransitions.com. That's the main corporate site. At the very bottom of the page, type in your zip code, and they will present the caring transitions that are closest to you.
Okay.
And the search term you want to use is senior relocation. Don't type in senior moving. You'll get moving companies.
Right.
Type in a clean out. You're going to get a guy who's going to come in and throw all your stuff away.
A junk remover or something like that.
You want to look at relocation. That's kind of the Google term that I've heard the most. But I would like to say one last thing. When you go into business for yourself, don't just look at money as the goal. My goal is monetarily. Figure out you've got emotional goals, you've got psychological goals, you're going to have spiritual goals,
time goals,
and you're going to have that monetary goal that you've got to watch. But if those other three, you could make $1 million. But if your family fell apart, it wasn't worth it. You know, if you become an evil, greedy person, it wasn't worth it. You know, if you're mentally hitting the bottle every night to numb yourself to the pain of what you're doing, it's not worth it. So go in with goals for all 4 categories.
That's really good advice. Crystal, has he become an evil, greedy person?
No, actually, this business has made him nicer.
Wow. Okay. And before this show turns into a marriage counseling session, we're going to go ahead and call that the end. But I want to thank you guys for joining us on 321 Profits, the podcast. And please, have a look at all of Caring Transitions information. And our show today was produced by the lovely and talented Julie Barth. And again, we will see you next time on 321 Profits, the podcast. Be sure to check out all the extras on the website at 321profitspodcast.com, where the videos and everything else will be there. And we'll see you next time. Remember to do your business well. Thanks, everybody.
This program is a media production of GLD Enterprises Communications Limited. Don't miss a single episode. Be sure to subscribe to 321 Profits today.